I went to Times Square alone, and I looked around. I was always looking for a real male role model, and I couldn't find it. But I was never into like real serious actors. I was into escapists. You better go home and start working hard, because this is your competition.
Some lives are marked by pain from the very first moment. For Sylvester Stallone, tragedy began in the delivery room. A birth complication left his face and voice permanently distorted. His childhood unfolded under domestic violence, parental rejection, and years of wandering homeless through New York. Yet from those broken pieces, he built two immortal cinematic monuments: Rocky, the underdog who rose to become an everyday hero, and Rambo, the battle-scarred soldier, both fierce and tragic. Stallone's journey from sleeping at a bus station to becoming a global superstar feels like a miracle of sheer willpower. But off-screen, his real life was even harsher. Some losses cannot be rewritten by any script, and some words, spoken by his own mother, still send chills. The only reason you exist is because the coat hanger didn't work. If your brain had truly been damaged, I would have left you by the window to freeze. So if you think you already know everything about Sylvester Stallone, wait. The truth behind the man may be even more heartbreaking than anything Rocky ever endured in the ring. On July 6, 1946, in a charity ward in New York, Sylvester Stallone entered the world after his mother went into sudden labor on a bus. But it was far from an ordinary beginning. During a forceps delivery accident, the doctor severed a facial nerve, leaving Stallone with partial paralysis of his lip, chin, and tongue for life. His gaunt, distinctive features and slurred, dragging speech were the result. Stallone would later admit bitterly, "I was born by accident, paralyzing the nerves on one side of my face. My voice is deep, slurred, and unchangeable. Childhood was anything but easy." He stuttered and became the neighborhood children's punchline. They mocked his looks, his voice, even calling him Sylvia as a cruel joke. Illness struck too. He suffered from rickets and a frail physique. Home offered no refuge. His father, Frank Stallone, a former polo player, struggled with violent outbursts. His mother, Jackie Stallone, was a powerful yet eccentric woman, a trapeze artist, fortune teller, astrologer, businesswoman, and later even a reality TV star on Big Brother. According to Jackie, Frank Stallone was the most brutal man God ever allowed to exist, often lashing his son with a polo whip until he bled. But for Sylvester, the cruel words cut deeper than the beatings. His father would sneer, "Why can't you be smarter? You'll never be anything. You were born paralyzed. Why not join the Navy? You'll never succeed in school." One of those barbs later slipped into the script of Rocky. "You weren't born with much of a brain, so you'd better start using your body." Stallone followed reluctantly until a turning point came when he saw Steve Reeves as Hercules on TV. The muscular figure transformed the teenager's vision. The next day, Stallone scavenged a car axle from a junkyard and turned it into his first pair of weights. He began sculpting his body into a machine of muscle while filming himself reading Walt Whitman to correct his stutter, determined to prove he had not only muscle but also intellect. The chaos of his childhood made him rebellious and reckless. Before the age of 12, he had been expelled from 13 different schools and broke 11 bones in various stunts. At 15, a doctor delivered the chilling verdict: "The boy's brain is dormant, as if asleep, not functioning normally." Instead of breaking him, it drove Stallone to train harder, to survive. Family life only worsened. His parents fought constantly and divorced in 1957. He and his younger brother Frank spent time in foster homes. Afterwards, Stallone lived with his father in Maryland, where Frank opened a chain of beauty salons, then later moved back to Philadelphia to live with his mother and stepfather, attending a special high school for troubled teens. Even his mother hurled cruel words. "You only exist because the coat hanger didn't work. If your brain really was damaged, I would have left you by the window to freeze." For a child, Such words were wounds deeper than any whip. At 11, Stallone ran away to find his mother in Philadelphia, but the court forced him back to his abusive father. From then on, pain became a constant companion. He admitted he was almost addicted to pain because it was the only thing he had known since birth. Cinema became his only escape. Day after day, he sat silently in theaters, watching the same movie 5 or 6 times. There he dreamed of becoming the hero, the man who could save a bus full of children. After finishing high school, he tried college. First drama at American College in Switzerland, then the University of Miami. But he dropped out before earning a degree, deciding to return to New York to pursue acting. Cinema had planted in Stallone a different image, a world where justice belonged to those who never gave up, an image he would later turn into his very identity. As a young man, Stallone left the lecture halls behind and threw himself into the cold streets of New York. With no money for rent, he slept at the Port Authority bus terminal, sometimes crawling into wall crevices to keep out the wind. His frayed coat became the only home he had. Those days, the city was not only merciless but dangerous. He later recalled, "Every day was another mugging, another beating, another acid attack. I was emotionally, mentally, and physically exhausted." To survive, Stallone did whatever work he could find. He cleaned lion cages at Central Park Zoo, worked as an usher in a movie theater, all while chasing auditions that led nowhere. His crooked face and slurred speech slammed doors in his face. Directors saw only the outline of a thug, good enough to fill the background or carry props backstage. Once he was asked bluntly, "Do you have a speech impediment?" A question that cut deep into his pride. In 1970, pushed to desperation, Stallone faced a life-or-death choice. He agreed to appear in The Party at Kitty and Studs, a cheap film shot in just 2 days for $200. He later admitted, "It was a choice between doing that movie or robbing someone because I was at the very end of the rope." When his career later soared, someone offered him $100,000 to buy the rights and bury the film. Stallone sneered, "I wouldn't buy it back for $2. My lawyer told them to get lost." Meanwhile, small chances began to appear. Stallone had fleeting roles in Woody Allen's Bananas 1971 and Clute 1971, but still went unnoticed. His first significant role came in the indie film The Lords of Flatbush 1974, where he played a tough guy alongside Henry Winkler and Perry King. Around this time, he married Sasha Chack, the first wife who stood by him through the hardest days. Even so, Stallone quickly realized he couldn't rely on the roles he was given. He began writing scripts, hoping to create his own path. His first idea was about a violent street thug who dreamed of becoming a professional boxer. Though broke and with his wife pregnant, Stallone refused to sell the script unless he could also star in it. With only $1,300 left, he drove a beat-up $40 car, taking 11 days to reach Los Angeles. The car broke down at the intersection of Hollywood and Vine, the crossroads of dream and reality, as if fate itself was testing him. In LA, Henry Winkler, by then a star of Happy Days, gave him temporary shelter. Stallone rented a shabby room just off Balboa Boulevard. He had only $106 left, a baby on the way, and $300 rent due. Cornered, he even considered selling his dog, Butkus, the only friend who had shared every ounce of his loneliness. But at the edge of despair, Stallone heard the wolf's howl inside him. He sat at his desk and wrote the first draft of Rocky in just 3.5 days, then revised it 25 more times. Few know that, while he wanted to be an actor, he craved even more to be a writer. He painted his windows black to lose track of night and day, shut off the phone and lights, and wrote by candlelight. By the time Rocky was finished, he had dozens of other scripts piled up. Rocky was more than a screenplay. It was Stallone's reflection of himself, a man misjudged from the way he walked, but one who refused to bow to fate. After finishing the draft of Rocky, Stallone brought the script to the studios. They immediately recognized its potential but refused to let him play the lead. At first, they offered $25,000, then raised it to $100,000, $250,000, and finally $360,000. An astronomical figure for a man who had once slept in bus stations and had only a few coins left in his pocket. Even his agent urged him, "Take it. You'll be set for life." But Stallone stood firm. "I've mastered the art of living with nothing. I'd eat spider webs if I had to. If I sell this without starring in it, I'll jump out the window." That stubbornness forced the producers to yield. The price he received dropped sharply. Only $20,000 for the script, $625 per week for the starring role, and the film's budget was slashed from $6 million down to barely $1 million. Producer Irwin Winkler admitted, "The studio didn't want to make this movie, a boxing film without a star. Who would watch it?" To cut costs, Stallone used everything he had. His father, Frank, played the timekeeper ringing the bell before each match. His brother, Frank Jr., sang on the streets. His wife, Sasha, appeared as a photographer. Even his dog, Butkus, whom he had once tried to sell just to survive, was cast in the film. The shoot had to take place in Philadelphia, the working-class city tied to Stallone's impoverished childhood. The production was guerrilla style. The famous market scene where Rocky runs and vendors throw fruit at him was entirely improvised, never written in the script. Rocky's first date with Adrian at an empty skating rink happened only because the crew couldn't afford extras. A string of budget-driven decisions accidentally created timeless moments. Bill Conti's score was chosen simply because it was the cheapest, yet it became iconic. The now legendary training montages owed their cinematic energy to a crude Steadicam, then a brand new technology used in only 2 films before. Susan Sarandon was considered for Adrian but deemed too glamorous. Instead, Talia Shire, Francis Ford Coppola's sister, was cast. She later recalled, "The script was extraordinary, the language like poetry. Sylvester had created a folk hero." When Rocky premiered in 1976 under the direction of John G. Avildsen, no one expected that a low-budget film would turn into a cultural earthquake. Avildsen himself thought it would play briefly at some drive-in theater in Mississippi. But when it screened at a small cinema in New York, lines wrapped around the block. From being dismissed, Rocky exploded into a phenomenon. Not only a box office hit grossing over $117 million, Rocky was also praised by critics. The Hollywood Reporter wrote, "On paper, neither character is remotely appealing, but on screen they steal your heart." The film received 10 Academy Award nominations, including Best Actor, Best Director, and Best Picture. Despite going up against giants like Taxi Driver, All the President's Men, and Network, Rocky won the coveted Oscar for Best Picture. Producer Irwin Winkler believed the film arrived at exactly the right moment. After Watergate, the Vietnam War, and social unrest, Rocky gave America an optimistic vision of the future. But on Oscar night in 1977, while the world cheered, Stallone quietly walked into the auditorium alone. His mother, Jacqueline, refused to attend unless there was room for her hairstylist. When a reporter asked, "Do you love the Oscars?" he deflected. On television, Jacqueline was described as looking more like Sylvester's sister than his mother, and still made sure to emphasize, "Without me, there would be no Stallone." Success brought money, but not enough to ease the bitterness. Rocky I earned Stallone $2.5 million, including $25,000 for the script, $2,000 for acting, and the rest from profit percentages. Rocky II raised his pay to $75,000, Rocky III to $120,000 plus millions more from points. Yet he owned no rights to Rocky. Every word, every syllable was written by me. But Hollywood stabbed me straight in the chest without even hiding the knife. And Stallone kept paying with his body. While filming Rocky IV, he made a reckless decision. He asked Dolph Lundgren, the towering co-star, built like steel and a 4th Dan Kyokushin karate black belt, to hit for real, to make the fight authentic. Instead of following the choreography, Lundgren landed a full-force hook to Stallone's chest. Everything seemed normal during the day, but by night he was in excruciating pain, unable to breathe. He was rushed from the Vancouver set to St. John's Medical Center in Santa Monica on a low-altitude emergency flight. Waking up in intensive care, he saw nuns standing around his bed and thought, "Okay, this is the curtain call." Doctors told him Lundgren's punch had slammed his heart against his breastbone, causing it to swell and his blood pressure to spike to 260 meteoric. They warned that without immediate intervention, his heart could keep swelling until it stopped altogether. Stallone spent 9 days in the hospital and later admitted, "I knew I was in trouble when the nuns greeted me right at the ICU." With a touch of dark humor, he later called the near-death experience getting hit by an electric train named Drago straight in the chest. Amazingly, that very punch was kept in the final cut of the film, appearing within the first 30 seconds of the on-screen fight. It was proof of Stallone's dedication, bordering on reckless. Right after being discharged from the hospital, he returned to the set to endure weeks of grueling shooting. "I gave it everything I had, and that's why I ended up having 5 back surgeries," he later admitted bitterly. But the cost did not stop there. In another action sequence in The Expendables, 2010, Stallone broke his neck during a fight with wrestler Steve Austin, requiring surgery to implant a metal plate in his spine. He confessed, "Honestly, I never fully recovered. It took such a toll on my body. I'm not the same anymore." Over the years, he suffered countless other injuries, fractured vertebrae, bronchitis, even oral fungal infections. His family lived in constant fear each time he went in for surgery, never knowing if he would come back whole after pushing himself to the edge once again. Rocky had made Stallone a global icon, but that peak demanded its price, and he paid with blood, with loneliness, and with his very body. If Rocky was the human face, close to America's working class, then Rambo was the lingering shadow of war. The character John Rambo was originally created by novelist David Morrell in his 1972 novel First Blood and first appeared on screen in 1982 through Stallone's performance. Unlike the romantic underdog of Rocky, Rambo was a Vietnam veteran scarred by PTSD, a drifter, abandoned by society, both hardened and tragic. First Blood was an unexpected success, grossing over $125 million and paving the way for Rambo, First Blood Part 2, 1985, and Rambo 3rd, 1988. If the first film was a somber tragedy about the aftermath of war, the sequels turned into muscular action spectacles, echoing the rising spirit of patriotism and militarism in 1980s America. President Ronald Reagan even referenced Rambo in his speeches, and critics often mocked him as the White House Rambo. Rambo grew into a massive pop culture product. Novelizations, comic books, video games, and even the children's animated series Rambo, The Force of Freedom, 1986, where a psychologically scarred veteran was repackaged into a toy-selling hero for kids. Stallone himself admitted feeling embarrassed by this over-commercialization, yet he could not deny that it cemented Rambo as a global icon. On a political and social level, Rambo was both a reflection and a driver of America's effort to restore the image of its military after the Vietnam defeat. The closing monologue of First Blood, when Rambo breaks down, crying that returning soldiers were treated not as heroes but as criminals, struck a chord with millions of Americans, especially veterans. But in later films, the character shifted into a hyper-violent symbol, spraying bullets through jungles and deserts, a kind of catharsis for post-war American society. After the trilogy, Rambo returned in 2008 with a fourth film, this time directed by Stallone himself. It sparked controversy for its extreme violence, but still drew audiences, proving the franchise's lasting power. In 2019, Rambo: Last Blood closed the nearly 4-decade journey, though it received mixed reviews. Notably, Stallone has never fully let go of the character. He once proposed a Rambo prequel using AI to digitally de-age himself into an 18-year-old John Rambo, describing it as a kind of Ken Burns documentary on Vietnam. The studio, however, chose a different path, with recent talks suggesting Noah Centineo might take on the role of young Rambo. Stallone admitted, "Taking on a character that has become legendary is extremely difficult. I've been there with Get Carter, and I know how overwhelming that shadow can be. From a hunted veteran in the woods, to a muscular warrior carrying the weight of American spirit, to an aging fighter ending his journey in blood, Rambo was never just a film series. It was a mirror of American society across 4 decades, where personal tragedy intertwined with global political tremors. And for Stallone, Rocky and Rambo were the twin pillars that defined his career, one the human heart, the other a blood-soaked obsession. As the new decade began, Sylvester Stallone was no longer the struggling actor begging for bit parts. He now stood shoulder to shoulder with Arnold Schwarzenegger, one of the 2 muscle kings of Hollywood, men who defined the action genre of the 1980s. Stallone wasn't just an actor. He wrote, directed, and produced, turning himself into one of the rare all-in-one machines in the film capital. In less than a decade, he unleashed a string of box office juggernauts: Rocky III, 1982, Cobra, 1986, Over the Top, 1987, Rambo III, 1988, Tango and Cash, 1989. Each release solidified his status as a global money-making powerhouse. Audiences of that era didn't just go to the theater for a story. They went to witness Stallone's chiseled physique, his invincible hero aura, and his signature brand of explosive action. Gunfire, rippling muscles, and sharp one-liners delivered like knives became his trademarks, fueling an unspoken rivalry with Schwarzenegger, who was truly the king of the box office. But at the top, Stallone also paid a price. Daring stunts left him repeatedly injured, and his insistence on writing, directing, and producing often drew criticism for being too controlling. Yet for moviegoers, he remained the emblem of the era, a man willing to throw himself into danger, using his own body as living proof of artistic dedication. In 1980s Hollywood, no star embodied the American action dream more vividly than Stallone. That was the time when he didn't just make films, he lived as an icon. If Rocky and Rambo made Sylvester Stallone an immortal on screen, then in real life he paid endlessly with personal losses no script could ever rewrite. His first marriage to Sasha Chak, the woman who had stood by him since his penniless days, began in 1974, when Stallone was still an unknown actor. Out of love, Sasha even turned down a major television role to stay behind the scenes, working as a photographer and helping her husband with scripts. She was the chief photographer during the making of Rocky, contributing quietly but significantly to the film's Oscar-winning triumph that catapulted Stallone to global stardom. They had 2 sons, Sage, born 1976, and Seargeoh, born 1979. But fate was merciless. In 1982, when Seargeoh was just 3, doctors diagnosed him with autism and advised long-term institutional care. In a 1985 People interview, both parents spoke openly of the heartbreak. Though Sasha adamantly rejected the doctor's recommendation, she chose to raise her son at home and devoted her life to research and therapy. Stallone admitted bluntly, "There is no real father-son relationship. I can only be a playmate to him." From then on, Sasha carried nearly the entire burden of care, while Stallone was consumed by the relentless demands of film sets. The crushing pressure fractured their marriage. They separated briefly in 1978, reconciled, but finally divorced on Valentine's Day, 1985, just as Rocky IV was dominating the box office. It became one of Hollywood's costliest settlements at the time. Sasha received $12 million. Rumors swirled that Stallone had been unfaithful with Danish model Brigitte Nielsen. speculation that only grew louder when Nielsen reportedly sent a provocative photo and her phone number directly to his hotel room, despite being married to someone else. After the divorce, Sasha moved to Malibu with their 2 sons, continued her photography career, and poured her heart into the Autism Research Foundation. Her devotion earned her the title of the family's silent hero. After Sasha, Stallone entered his second marriage with Danish actress-model Brigitte Nielsen, his co-star in Rocky IV. The story began like a textbook Hollywood drama. Nielsen, only 21 at the time, slipped a headshot and her phone number under Stallone's hotel room door in Manhattan. That bold invitation quickly ignited a whirlwind romance, and just months later, on December 15, 1985, they held a lavish wedding at producer Irwin Winkler's Beverly Hills home. But this marriage became one of the shortest and loudest of the 1980s. Both had left their previous partners to be together, and the rushed foundation was already unstable. During their 19 months together, they became tabloid darlings, appearing on red carpets, posing for steamy fashion spreads, while rumors of infidelity and betrayal swirled. Nielsen was accused of using Stallone to advance her career and of being unfaithful during the filming of Beverly Hills Cop 2. Stallone, in turn, was rumored to have had an affair with his wife's secretary. His mother, Jackie Stallone, publicly branded Nielsen the worst woman I've ever met, while Nielsen blamed her mother-in-law for sabotaging the marriage. The 2 women waged a war of words in the press for years before unexpectedly reuniting on Celebrity Big Brother UK, where they indirectly reconciled. During their time as husband and wife, Stallone and Nielsen co-starred in Cobra, 1986. But the film was critically panned, with the press mocking it as a disastrous Rocky and Rockette. The couple became objects of ridicule, and when their marriage ended in 1987, it was widely seen as Hollywood's biggest PR wedding failure. Nielsen later admitted she had doubts from the start, but gave in after many pleas from Stallone. She recalled, "Who wouldn't want to marry Rocky? But soon after I realized this wasn't for me. Things got very bad." Following the divorce, Nielsen claimed she was blacklisted, losing nearly all work opportunities in Hollywood and forced to return to Europe to restart her career. Stallone, meanwhile, saw his career stumble. Attempts to branch into comedy such as Oscar 1991 and Stop or My Mom Will Shoot 1992 were derided as disasters, branding him an outdated action star. In later years, Nielsen often called the marriage the biggest mistake of my life, though she never denied Stallone's talent and professionalism. She even defended her ex-husband against abuse allegations, and 3 decades later, the 2 reunited on set for Creed II, 2018. Ironically, from being a ridiculed couple, Stallone and Nielsen eventually closed that chapter with mutual respect. 2 former adversaries who now met simply as professionals, moving forward on their separate paths. After the divorce, both went in very different directions. Nielsen continued her string of headline-making relationships, even shocking the public by dating rapper Flava Flav. And at 54, she gave birth to her youngest daughter, Frida, with her current husband, Mattia Desi. After the turbulent divorce from Brigitte Nielsen, Stallone entered what the press dubbed his Hollywood playboy phase. His name became linked to countless actresses and supermodels, from Janice Dickinson and Angie Everhart to Pamela Bean, the former Kardashian family nanny. The tabloids documented every party he attended, always flanked by glamorous women. Yet the louder the headlines, the more hollow his personal life became. His career slumped, audiences began turning away, and fleeting affairs only deepened the image of a star adrift. Then, in the late 1980s, he met Jennifer Flavin, a model nearly 20 years his junior. In stark contrast to his reckless past, Stallone gradually found in Jennifer a quiet anchor. Their relationship spanned many years, filled with ups and downs, even collapsing abruptly in 1994 when Stallone ended things with a 6-page handwritten breakup letter. But eventually they reconciled, and in 1997, Stallone finally made Jennifer Flavin his wife. The wedding in London was understated. No flashbulbs, no extravagance. For the first time in his life, the muscle hero chose simplicity over spectacle. With Jennifer, he had 3 daughters, Sophia, Sistine, and Scarlett. This was the family Stallone had longed for but never managed to keep in his previous 2 marriages. It seemed the 3rd marriage would be his safe harbor, yet it was not without turbulence. Since 1997, Stallone and Jennifer built the image of a model family with their 3 daughters, the Angels, who often accompanied their father on red carpets. Jennifer became the quiet but steadfast backbone, the one person with enough patience to weather Stallone's volatile nature. But in August 2022, the public was stunned when Jennifer suddenly filed for divorce after 25 years of marriage. In her petition, she accused Stallone of intentionally dissipating, depleting, and/or wasting marital assets. A shocking charge, pointing to his multi-million-dollar fortune and luxury properties, including a $35 million Palm Beach estate and the $58 million Los Angeles mansion once sold to Adele. She sought exclusive residence in their shared home and requested an unequal division of assets in her favor. Rumors of infidelity exploded, especially after Stallone had a tattoo of Jennifer's face covered with an image of Butkus, the dog who had been his companion since the days of poverty. While Jennifer stated bluntly that, "We have irreconcilable differences," Stallone responded with a softer tone. "I love my family. We are amicably and privately addressing these personal issues." On Instagram, he posted a photo of himself holding Jennifer's hand alongside a family picture, captioned simply, "Wonderful," a gesture that seemed to signal he wasn't ready to lose the home he had finally built. And then, just a month later, something remarkable happened. The two withdrew the divorce petition and suddenly reappeared together, hand in hand at a major event. A representative for Stallone revealed, "They met back at home, where they talked and worked through their differences. They're both very happy." By November of that same year, Jennifer and their 2 daughters stood beside Stallone at the premiere of Tulsa King. He himself admitted, "I used to have my priorities all messed up, putting work above everything. Now I realize that family love is what truly matters most." In an interview with People, Stallone described that period as chaotic, but also as an awakening. "I came to realize something more valuable than anything else: love for my family. That love is above work, and it was a hard lesson to learn." Jennifer once said, "Stallone in real life is very different from what people see on screen. He's stubborn, sometimes arrogant, but deep down he's a devoted father." Thus, the 3rd marriage became the longest, most patient chapter in Stallone's private life, a testament that, after all the chaos and tragedies, he was still capable of holding on to a home of his own. If Sage and Seargeoh were the 2 unhealed wounds of his life, then Jennifer Flavin and their 3 daughters became his greatest source of comfort. Sophia, Sistine, and Scarlett not only carried the Stallone name, but were, in his eyes, the 3 princesses who transformed their hardened father's soul. Among them, Sophia, the eldest, was his special pride. At 16, she underwent a dangerous heart surgery for a congenital defect. Stallone recalled the chilling moment when the doctor said, "Kiss her one last time, because she may not make it." In that instant, the man who had played the indomitable warrior collapsed like a child. Miraculously, Sophia survived, and from then on, he has always called her the love of my life. Sistine, the 2nd daughter, inherited much of her father's charisma on the red carpet. She pursued modeling, walking for Chanel and Dolce & Gabbana, but always insisted, "My father is the one who taught me discipline." Scarlett, the youngest, shared Stallone's stubborn streak and passion for sports. At home, she was the one who often argued toe-to-toe with him, but he saw it as a sign of strength, something he always encouraged his daughters to hold on to. In 2017, all three sisters were named Miss Golden Globe, a moment Stallone described as a greater achievement than any award I've ever received. And in interviews, he often boasted about their family gatherings, the joy of which, he said, helped heal the wound left by Sage's death. Stallone once confessed, "My daughters taught me that strength isn't in muscle, it's in love and patience. I was once an absent father, now I just want to be a present one." A troubled private life, a faltering career, and fate's blows still did not relent. In 2012, Sage Stallone, his eldest son and pride with first wife Sasha Chak, died suddenly at the age of 36, while engaged and full of plans for the future. His body was discovered by a housekeeper at his Mulholland Terrace home in Studio City. At first, U.S. media widely reported that Sage had died of a drug overdose after prescription bottles were found at the scene. Rumors of substance abuse spread quickly, deepening the family's grief. But a month later, the Los Angeles County Coroner's Office confirmed the real cause: atherosclerosis, an undetected congenital heart disease, unrelated to drugs. Toxicology tests revealed no narcotics in his system, only a trace of hydrocodone below therapeutic levels, prescribed for dental pain after multiple tooth extractions, an operation his mother, Sasha, had pleaded with him not to rush. Born in 1976, Sage had once stood beside his father in Rocky V, 1990, playing Robert Balboa Jr., and later in Daylight, 1996. Beyond acting, he was passionate about directing and founded Grindhouse Releasing, a company dedicated to restoring and distributing cult B-movies. Friends remembered Sage as a happy recluse, rarely seen at gyms, but deeply introspective, with plans for marriage and a return to filmmaking. The news crushed Stallone. He publicly begged the media to end the speculation. "Losing a child is the hardest pain. I earnestly ask for respect for the memory of my talented son and compassion for his mother, Sasha. Sage was our firstborn, the center of our universe, and I only hope his memory and his soul can rest in peace." Sage's funeral was held on July 21, 2012, at St. Martin of Tours Catholic Church in Los Angeles, attended quietly by family and close friends. The man who once played the indestructible warrior now bowed in defeat like a child. For the first time in his life, Stallone faced a battle he knew he could never truly rise from. But the storms did not stop. Just a month after Sage's death, tragedy struck again. Stallone's half-sister, Toni Felitti, died at 48 from lung cancer after years of addiction to painkillers. The loss not only compounded his grief, but also dredged up the shadow of a 1987 scandal, when Toni had accused Stallone and reached a multi-million-dollar settlement, something their mother herself had called a shakedown. In less than 2 months, losing both his son and his sister, Stallone seemed drained of all strength, physically and spiritually. Tragedies continued. In 2016, another blow struck. Stallone's half-brother, Dante Stallone, just 19 years old, was brutally attacked by 2 strangers in Florida, leaving him with a broken jaw, shattered teeth, and the need for reconstructive surgery. Stallone could only choke out, "A good kid, an A student," and he had to go through this. Beyond the major losses of children and family, he also endured smaller but piercing wounds. In 2013, his beloved dog Phoebe was killed by a coyote, an event that made Stallone weep like a child. The tragedy immediately brought back memories of his early days in poverty. When he was homeless, he once sold Butkus, his only loyal companion, for $50 just to survive, only to later buy him back for $3,000 and immortalize him on screen in Rocky. Stallone also faced scandals that shook both his career and image. The most notorious came in 2007 when he traveled to Australia to promote Rocky Balboa. At Sydney Airport, customs officials discovered 48 vials of the growth hormone gintropin, HGH, human growth hormone, in his luggage, a substance strictly regulated in the country. Initially, Stallone had declared no prohibited goods on his customs form, but was later summoned, his hotel room and private jet searched. He even tossed 4 vials of testosterone out of his hotel window as customs officers closed in. In court, Stallone submitted a letter of apology, admitting it was a terrible mistake, a bizarre and truly regrettable incident. He was fined about $10,000 and forced to publicly acknowledge his use of HGH. But instead of dodging the issue, Stallone chose confrontation. He declared, "People think HGH is some magic drug. In reality, it's just something that helps me stay healthy, keeps my body in good condition, especially at over 60. Anyone would use it if they could." That defense unleashed a firestorm of controversy. Medical experts condemned him, warning that an action star openly endorsing HGH could dangerously influence young people. Yet Stallone never backed down, even doubling down. HGH is the future. Everyone will need it. Alongside this scandal, his private life was constantly in the spotlight for noisy, short-lived romances. Even within his own family, harmony was elusive. His mother, Jacqueline Stallone, once declared bluntly on live television, "Without me, there would be no Stallone." Such fractures revealed a truth behind the fame. Off-screen, he was always locked in battles, sometimes harsher than any fight he ever staged in the movies. After all the private tragedies, scandals, and moments when his career seemed finished, Sylvester Stallone still stands tall as one of Hollywood's immortal screen icons. If James Dean or Marlon Brando once defined rebellion, then Stallone embodied the very image of the muscle-bound hero of the 1980s. From Rocky to Rambo, he not only created 2 parallel film franchises, but also helped shape an entire genre of action cinema, where personal grit and the power of will mattered above all else. Rocky transcended a boxing film. It became an American cultural symbol, immortalized on the steps of Philadelphia, where people still run up and raise their fists like Rocky Balboa, a silent ritual honoring the spirit of never giving up. From the screen, Rocky's lines spilled into real life, becoming guiding words for millions. Above all, the quote, "It's not about how hard you hit, it's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward," has broken beyond cinema to become a life philosophy, echoed in speeches, in sports, and in the private moments when people find the strength to rise after failure. For Stallone, his greatest legacy lies not only in box office numbers or golden statues. He once admitted that the most important line he ever wrote wasn't in the middle of a fight, but in Rocky Balboa, 2006, when the character says, "This kid's gonna be the best kid in the world." That was the message he wanted for his own children. A testament that behind the spotlight and the muscles, what he desired most was to be a father, passing on resilience instead of the scars of his own life. Thus, Sylvester Stallone is remembered not just as an actor, screenwriter, or director, but as a global emblem of perseverance, a man who turned his personal tragedies into an endless source of inspiration for audiences. He is the living proof of Rocky's philosophy. It doesn't matter how many times you fall. What matters is that you can stand back up and keep moving forward. In recent years, Sylvester Stallone has ceased to be just the muscle-bound hero on screen and has become an aging father seeking peace within his family. After his eldest daughter Sophia's successful heart surgery and recovery, she graduated from the University of Southern California in 2019, a moment that finally brought true healing to the Stallone household. On one occasion, the whole family returned to Philadelphia, the birthplace of Rocky, and his 3 daughters recited the iconic line from Rocky Balboa. "It ain't about how hard you hit, it's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward." The words brought Stallone to tears. In an interview, he confessed, "I spent time making a stupid movie instead of making a life for my child. Was it worth it?" Reflecting on his current home life, he choked up, "You only realize the value of something when you almost lose it. I'm the luckiest man alive." Even at 79 in 2025, Stallone refuses to sit still. He starred in the television series Tulsa King, Paramount Plus, a milestone marking his first major lead role on TV, and quickly drew attention with a paycheck of nearly $1 million per episode. At the same time, he continues to build on his cinematic legacy. In 2024, he confirmed his involvement in a sequel to Cliffhanger and hinted at another installment of The Expendables. Netflix also released the documentary Sly, 2023, capturing his journey from an unhappy childhood to Hollywood legend, giving younger generations a deeper look at a man who survived every punch life threw at him. Off-screen, Stallone devotes more time to his family. He frequently shares everyday moments with Jennifer Flavin and their 3 daughters on social media. Family has become the new center of his world, replacing the spotlight and the explosive blockbusters. In his twilight years, Stallone still trains regularly to stay strong, but he now seeks balance. Between work and family, between legacy and love. Perhaps after decades of being a hero on screen, what Stallone is most proud of today isn't Rocky or Rambo, but being able to sit in a peaceful home, watching his 3 daughters grow and whisper, "This is the greatest role of my life." The life of Sylvester Stallone is a vivid testament to the paradox of Hollywood. A man who once wandered homeless could rise to become a global superstar. A father once absent from his children's lives who learned to kneel before the pain of loss. And a star accustomed to the brightest lights who finally found peace in the quiet of family. From Rocky to Rambo, he not only rewrote the history of action cinema, but etched into American cultural memory the image of someone who never gives up. Yet if one were to ask what his greatest legacy truly is, the answer lies not in Oscar statuettes or box office numbers. It lies in how Sylvester Stallone faced his most private tragedies and turned them into strength, to live with more compassion, to love more deeply. Now, as he nears 80, he continues his journey, but no longer alone. Will you remember Sylvester Stallone as the muscle hero of the screen, or as the man who discovered life's most profound truth, that family and love are the ultimate victory? Share your thoughts below, and don't forget to like and subscribe to join us in the next inspiring story.